Greetings, 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 and hello, and everything friendly. This is a really good part in the Bhagavatam. So we're going to jump into it as usual, I guess. So the king Barishat has heard Narada explained the whole long allegory of the citizen and the cities, and then the quick allegory of the deer, which everybody misunderstood. And I tried my best not to get you to misunderstand it. Then he now makes a statement. The king makes a statement to Narada, and then he says, I got one question left unanswered from everything that you explained. So let's see what that is. The king says, I've heard, I'll read Sanskrit only where it's kind of thick, okay? Actually, let me set that up. Where's my Sanskrit here? Get to the right number. I think we're starting at 56 of the 28th chapter. Yeah, we're starting at 56. All right. King Barishat said, I have heard everything you said. Actually, we love Sanskrit. Let's just read the Sanskrit, right? So much easier to think when it's referenced things. Rajavacha Shrutam Anvikshitam Brahman Bhagavan Yad Abhashata Naita Jnana Upadhyaya Kim Na Bruyur Vidur Yadi. So what he says here is, I heard everything that you said. So I was listening carefully throughout all the story of the citizen. I was listening carefully when you explained it. I listened to the analogy of the deer, and I thought about it carefully, and I see the truth in it. This is how you have to deal with information. There's 3 stages at least to learning. The first thing, and each one has to operate smoothly. Like on a bicycle, the parts have to be oiled, or in your body, the tubes have to be clean. In the process of learning, everything has to operate well and have no obstruction. And then you get the information. So the first part is listening. As the king says, I listened really carefully to all the stuff you said. The second part is you have to think about it. You have to think about it and put it all together in your mind and construct it yourself in your mind. You try to construct it in your mind so that you can see it. So when you hear information, you try to visualize it in your mind and make it concrete, make it take form and shape in your mind. And then the third step is that it becomes real. It's not just something you see in your mind, but you see it in the world. You try to see it in the world. It means you try to see how it actually works, how it works in action. So the king's telling Narada, I did that with everything you said, and I see that it's true. And so I can only conclude that all these sages who tried to guide me, because he's a king, right? Kings generally have a cabinet. And in the Vedic days, most of the members of the cabinet were brahmanas and yogis, people that knew the Vedas and could advise the king the right thing to do. So he certainly got tons of gurus. So now he's thinking, why did none of these people tell me the stuff that you just told me? You ever feel that way? You ever feel that way after you've invested your time in learning something from somebody, and then somebody else comes along and gives you better information in like 20 seconds? And then you feel like, why did this person not tell me that? So he says, I can only conclude that all these sages who tried to guide me did not understand what you understand. Or if they did, I have no idea why they did not teach it to me. Then the next thing he says, very similar. He says, Sangchayotra tume vipra sanchinnas tat krato mahan rishyopi hi muhyanti yatra nendriya vrittaya. I'll translate to the second half first. The second half says, it seems that even sages who suppress their sensuality are bewildered. This is a good sentence. Risheopi, even if you're a sage. Risheopi muhyanti. They're confused, they're bewildered. They're definitely bewildered. Risheopi himuhyanti. It seems that even the sages are bewildered. Yatra nendriya vrittaya, even the ones that are not doing anything with their senses. Even the ones that have controlled or suppressed their senses, they're still confused. It's only Narada, who's a special quality, who's not confused about life. The rest of the guys who are doing all this mechanics of yoga and study, they're still confused and giving the king useless information. So what is it that's special about Narada? But now that I have listened to you, King says, almost all my doubts are unraveled. Almost. So he's got one little one left. Karman yarabhate yena pumang iha vihayatam amutran yena dehena jushtani sayad ashnute. So here's his doubt. I have one remaining confusion, he says. So here's confusion. We do a deed in this life, but enjoy its result mostly in the next life, in a different body. So he's confused about that. How does it relate to anything that he heard from Narada? It relates a lot, because all the deeds and activities that Puranjana performed, the citizen, he actually primarily he suffered the results of those in the afterlife, and then primarily got the benefit of the good things that he did in his next birth. So that's bringing up an issue that the king has been wondering about his whole life, since he's very much engaged in karma, because all these ministers in his cabinet keep telling him, do this karma, do that other karma. So he's been thinking a lot his whole life about karma, and also in the story itself that Narada told, there's this example of how you do something in this life and you get the result of it in the next life, and that seems weird. So the next thing that he says, iti veda vidam vada shruyate tatra tatraha karma yat kriyate proktam parokshamna prakashate. But we do a deed in this life, but enjoy its result mostly in the next life in a different body. This is what those who know the Vedas say, but it doesn't seem right. Why should the beneficiary of our action be a different person? A person we become in the future, not the one who performed it in the present. See his question? It makes a lot of sense. I bet you a lot of us have this doubt in one wording or another, basically in there, about reincarnation and karma. What sense is there if I do a deed now? Let's say if I help an old lady across the street, why do I not get like a promotion at work or something? Or why do I not have like a related result, like people take care of me in this life? I walked old ladies across the street when I was a kid. Now that I'm an old person, nobody's taking care of me. What's the karma in that? Why is it that the result from doing something will happen to somebody that's not even me? I'm not even going to remember myself when I'm this person that gets the result of the thing that I did. So what sense is there in that? You probably have that doubt, right? It's a very reasonable, rational doubt, so that's why probably most people do have it. You understand the doubt? I've made it clear. I did this thing. Why should somebody else get the benefit of it? I understand it's also me in the future that gets the benefit of it, but it's not really me. It's a whole different person, a whole different body. Whether you should do the thing not for the result is a different story. The king's question is, when you do something for a result, You don't get the result until you're a different person. What's the sense in that? Why even care? Well, that's also just evading the question. Why not care about your future? You better care about your future. If you don't care about your future, you're short-sighted. Your future life is your future. Why don't you not care about it? But his question is, it doesn't make sense that I perform an activity now and I don't get the result now. I get the result when I'm somebody totally different. We do a deed in this life, but we enjoy its result mostly in the next life in a different body. This is what those who know the Vedas say, but it doesn't seem right. Why should the beneficiary of our action be a different person? A person who we become in the future, not the one who performed it in the present. So now Narada answers. Narada uvacha yenai varapate karma tenai va mutra tat pumang punkte yav. What is that word? Yavyava. Punkte yavyava dhanena lingena manasa swayam. So he says the body that performs the action in this life is the same body as the one that enjoys the action in the next life. That's Narada's. I love Narada Muni, and he just exploded a bomb of knowledge. I love this type of presentation where you kind of shock the person, because the whole question is based on the idea that I'm going to be a different person in the next life. The body that does one deed in this life is not the body that receives the reaction of it in the next life. So why? The person that did the action should get the result. It shouldn't go to another person. Narada says, what are you thinking? It's the same person. You're the same person. The body that did the action in this life is the same body that gets the result in the next life. Now, how are you going to understand that? Because it's not the same body. What the hell is Narada talking about? My body died, got burned. I went through some weird stuff in some mental factory somewhere, and then I came out through some other weird tunnel, and now I have a different body. It's not the same body. What is Narada trying to tell me? It's actually the same body. It's not the body at all. So he says, the body that performed the action in this life is the same as the body that enjoys the action in the next life. This is because the true performer and enjoyer of action is not the physical body, but the mind. And the mind of the living entity is constant and does not change from one lifetime to the next. You think that it's your body, the physical substance, that's doing stuff, but it's not the physical stuff that's doing it. It's the mind that's making things happen. The physical stuff is just a puppet being moved by the mind, like a tool. Like if you surf the internet at the library, or if you surf the internet at your friend's house, or if you surf the internet at your house on your computer, you're using different tools to do stuff, but you're doing the stuff. You're just using a different tool. The true performer and enjoyer of action is not the physical body. The body doesn't initiate anything. It's just earth, water, fire, and air, and some space. There's nothing sentient in it. It's the mind, which is the vehicle of sentience, which initiates and performs actions with the body. And the mind that you have in this life is the same mind that you have in the next life. And the same mind that you had in your previous life. Who was I in my previous life? You were you. You're the same person. Just you. Who am I going to be in my next life? You. The same mind. You are the same mind throughout everything. You just get a different type of computer to use. So he's most of the rest of his dissertation or like explanation to the king, it's going to be to explain how what the mind is, kind of, and how it moves from one life to the next, and what its relationship is with the physical body. But now he's going to give an example first, actually. A good example. The mind is the causal body. It's the body which it's the thing which causes action. Now he says, Shyanam imam utsrajya sasantam purusho yata karmat yahitam bhunkte tadrishe tarena va. The living... Oh, what am I reading? Okay, ready? So he says, here's an example. He says, when you are awake and you do things, and when you go to sleep, when you are awake, you do things. And when you go to sleep, you dream about those things and the feelings they generate. Right? You understand this thing that he's pointing to? He says, when you sleep at night, you dream. What do you dream about? 90% of what you dream about is the stuff that you did during the day. Something special that you did during the day that catched your attention and you didn't really sufficiently dwell upon it or examine it. That is what you dream about. Or it could be from other days, previous days, but from the waking state of what you do while you're awake, those actions populate the mind with things that are to be thought about, to be dealt with, to be explored. And then when you're asleep, you explore those things. You take advantage of that time to explore those things, and that's called dreams. So he says, when you're awake, you do things, and then when you're asleep, you dream about the things that you do. This is no different from how karma works over multiple lifetimes. You do things now, which is like when you're being awake, and this results in enjoying things later, like when you're asleep and dreaming. So when you're asleep, you're not using the body. The body which did the things that you dream about, or saw the things, or heard the things, or felt the things even, that you experienced during the day, is not the body that you then use to explore those things in your dream. So he's just giving a practical daily experience of the fact that the mind is actually the one that enjoys the actions, performs the actions, experiences the actions, and can explore and experience the results of the actions independent from the body. Doesn't require the same body in order to enjoy the actions performed from it. When you're awake, you do things, and when you go to sleep, you dream about those things and the feelings they generate. This is no different from how karma works over multiple lifetimes. You do things now, and this results in enjoying things later. Just like when you do things during the day, and that results in your dreams. Make sense? Let me know if it doesn't make sense, and I'll try to help. Meanwhile, I'll get the next text up on the screen. Okay, the next thing he says is Mamaite manasa yadyat asavaham iti bruvan krniyat tatpuman radham karma yena punar bhava. The physical body is a tangible expression of the identity and desires of the mind. This is huge. This is huge. This explains what the body is, what the physical body is. He says it's a tangible expression of the identity and the desires of the mind. So the mind is an entity which actuates the sense of I and mine. And the body is the tangible reflection or tangible instantiation, tangible manifestation, tangible output of the I and mind that the mind holds. Mind. I wonder what that word, the etymology of that English word might be interesting. I and mine is what the mind is all about. The physical body is a tangible expression of the identity, and so this is why the physical body is not unrelated to who you are, which is what a lot of spiritualists, modern spiritualists, get completely wrong. They try to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and say the body has nothing to do with you. You're not this body. The body is the tangible expression of the sense of self, which is in the mind. So it's certainly an extension of yourself, just like a leaf is an extension from a root of a tree. The physical body is a tangible expression of the identity and desires of the mind. Using this body, the mind performs actions and then gets the results of those actions, which in turn cause a new, updated expression of the mind's identity and desires. So this is showing how having a body causes you to actually get another one. So what he's saying is the mind has a sense of identity, and because it has a sense of identity, it has a sense of desire. When there's a sense of identity, then the I wants... the I relates to things in the world, wants certain things to relate to it and wants other things not to relate to it. So the I and the mind is this thing that the mind is responsible for holding. That I and mind creates a body so that it can, make itself real. It has a sense of I, and to make it real, it puts it in a body. It creates the body. I think he'll explain it. It creates the body from external elements. So it makes this body to make itself real and to do things with it, to make some things relate to it and make some things get away from it. But as a result of doing things with the body, it changes the sense of the I and the desires. You wanted a pizza, you got the pizza. Now you're going to start to want something else. And because now you want something else, the sense of I starts to change. I'm not the person that's hungry for pizza. I'm a person that's not hungry for pizza now. So since the actions, in other words, it's a two-way street. And this is really, really, really important for understanding identity and making your identity healthy. It's a two-way street between the mind and the body. The mind is the thing which creates the body. So why are people so upset about whether they're overweight or if they have too much hair in their body or whatever it is? Why are they so upset? Because that freaking body represents you. And when you look at it and when you see it, if it doesn't give you the feedback that matches what's in your mind about you, it's depressing and frustrating. It blocks your identity. You don't want a body that blocks your identity. You want a body that expresses your identity. That's the purpose of having the body. So that's the two-way street. The body sends back feedback about who you are. So it's created from this mind sense of who you are, but it also sends back the feedback of who you are. It establishes who you are. So by doing so, as it does different things, it changes who you are. You've created it from who you are, but it also creates you by it being who you are. So because it's changing the I, then the I is going to change the body also. And eventually the body is not going to be able to stretch or change enough to fit the differences that have arisen in the I. The body is old and breaking and everything, and that is just not working with the sense of I at all. The sense of I is eventually going to get rid of it and go get another one. So that's what's going on. The mind creates the body, and then the body creates the mind also. Not really, but the I-ness in the body, the I-ness in the mind creates the physical body, but then the conditions and the actions of the physical body modify the I-ness in the mind. And then if the I-ness in the mind changes, then the physical representation needs to change. And it can change a little bit, but it can't change past certain boundaries because it's a physical structure with limitations. So that's how having a physical body mandates the okay, back. I don't know how much we missed. I answered Davana, and I said, or Davana, and I said, the thing about the dream is that the actions that you perform with your body, you can enjoy the results of them without the body, and the dream is the proof of that. And then I also told Om Chamunda that that's correct, basically, that the Nard is going to go on and talk about this, that therefore the face is the index to the mind. What happened is my cable got unplugged. Sorry about that. Didn't know how that worked. I didn't see that really. So let's continue. With the next statement. Yatanu miyate chittam ubhayair indriyehta evam pragdehajam karma lakshate chittavrtabi. Now he's talking about what you asked Chamunda. What you asked is therefore the body reflective of the condition of the mind. So, for example, if your body's beautiful, your mind is beautiful. So Narad is not going to talk about this. Also, you have to be, yes, the answer to that question is unabashedly yes. But people who don't, it takes one to know one is also a very valid principle. Face's index of the mind is a valid truth, and also it takes one to know one is a valid truth. A lot of people actually can't recognize actual beauty. They just think that if you stick your ass out really far and shake it, that you're beautiful. Or that you, whatever they think is beauty, it's not beauty, it's just the sexual component of beauty. Or there's aspects of beauty that can be faked. But the thing that has a beautiful mind will have a beautiful form. And again, this is the simple principle. It's just like astrology. It's pretty simple when it's theoretical, but when you actually open up a chart, there's all kinds of ways of weird, unusual, unexpected things happening. So somebody could have some ugliness in some certain way that reflects some part of their mind which is not good, but have a lot of beauty in other ways. That you don't have a mind that's all 100% homogeneously good or bad or beautiful or ugly, nor do you have a body that's like that. This actually happened with Krishna when he was infant. When he's an infant, one of the demons that tried to assassinate him took an incredibly beautiful form. And because she was so beautiful, everybody just assumed she was good. And so she just walked right in and tried to assassinate the infant. So this one of the important things there is, yes, the physical form represents the internal self, but you can fake the physical thing. You can temporarily fake the physical for some days, minutes, weeks, hours, years. You can fake it. So if you really want to know someone's mind, you're better off actually, whenever you have the opportunity, directly interacting with their mind. But if you need to make a quick inference, then you can do so from the body. Ted Bundy looks handsome. That's what I'm saying about astrology. It's interesting. He's not handsome. If anybody looks at Ted Bundy, should get creeped out. But if you can't recognize stuff, then I'm sorry. So here's what he says in 63. This is why So he says the physical body is a tangible expression of the identity and desires of the mind. This is why we can infer a person's state of mind by observing their physical expressions and conditions. It's not just the way you look, but also the way you move, all the body language and everything. Everything physical about you reveals the mental thing. Why? Because the mental thing is the actual thing that's making the movements and doing the actions and making the form. This is why we can... So somebody asked if yoga can change the way you look. Yeah, but not past certain boundaries, because that's why you need to have reincarnation. This is why we can... Well, of course yoga can change the way you look. That's why 90% of the people doing it do it. They want a better butt. This is why we can infer a person's state of mind by observing their physical expressions and conditions. And since the current state of mind results from previous actions, we can infer a person's previous life from the way their mind currently operates. Do you get that? Everybody's like, wow, I want to know my previous life. Your previous life is obvious. Who was I in my previous life? You were you. What was I doing in my previous life? The same stuff that you're inclined to doing now. So you see what he's saying? He's saying since the mind generates the body, then you can infer the condition of the mind from the condition and the action of the body. And since it's sequential, that the mind produces a new body after being, after it establishes enough difference from its current body, it produces a new body, then you can tell what its condition was. You can infer what the condition was in the previous life, because certain things have to have happened in the previous life to make the mind come to this condition now. And you can also tell the future. This is why physiognomy works. Palm reading, hand reading, physiognomy. You can look at the shape of a person's leg. You can look at the shape of their toes, their fingers, everything, and you can come up with information just like as if you look at an astrology chart. This is why we can infer a person's state of mind by observing their physical expressions and conditions. And since the current state of mind results from previous actions, right? He said the mind creates the body, then the body influences the mind. So the mind has been influenced or created or changed by the physical state and things that the person did previously. The current mind is the result of the things that were previously done. Just like the current dreams are the result of the experiences you previously had. The current mind is the result of things you previously did. Therefore, if you look at your current mind, you can understand what you previously did before you had this body. Because those are the things that got you this body. This is why we can infer a person's state of mind by observing their physical expressions and conditions. And since the current state of mind results from previous actions, we can infer a person's previous life from the way their mind currently operates. Now he says something very, very useful. This is very useful if you want to know your previous life. He's going to give a detail about how to understand, how to clearly see the previous life. Nanu bhutam kvachanena. Nanu bhutam kvachanena dehanadrishtam ashrutam. Kadachit upalabhyeta yad rupam yadrik atmani. Sometimes you'll remember in vivid detail, in good rupa, with a lot of detail. Sometimes you'll remember in vivid detail experiences that you have not seen or heard of at all in this lifetime. Now, the important part is the vivid detail. The dreams, he previously said, your dreams are the result of the actions that you've performed. Dreams are how you mull over the experiences that you had while you were awake, but you didn't really get a chance to fully explore. Sometimes the dreams are going to be based on experiences that you had in the different lifetimes. So occasionally what's going to happen is you're going to get things in your awareness during the dream which are from ancient lifetimes. And the way that you'll know them is because if you are able to remember the dream, usually you'll wake up like, whoa, what was that? Because it's so shocking. You realize you're dreaming at the apex of the dream, and then you wake up. You'll realize, how did I have such a detailed new experience in the dream? That's how I can describe it. If you ever have a new experience in the dream, like, I never did that. I never felt that before. It's because it's not new. There cannot be something new in the dream. Knowledge is acquired by contact of the senses to the object. Seeing is believing. Seeing is knowing. Knowledge is not acquired without senses. That's the purpose of them. That's why they're called Gyanendriyas. So you can't get knowledge in a dream. Knowledge comes from the senses, either the ears or the eyes or the hands. So if you're experiencing something in a dream vividly that you have not experienced during your life, then you know that that's from a previous life. Tenasya tadrisham raja lingino dehasambhavan. Shradat svanubhuto shradhat svananu bhutoto na mana sparshtam arhati. He's saying it's impossible to remember something one has not experienced. This is a very simple and important principle. When you're dreaming, you're remembering things. It's impossible to remember something that you didn't experience. Remember means the prefix is remember. You can't, member means to have joined to something. Remember means to re-experience something that you joined with. So in other words, you saw something and then you remember it later. So it's impossible to remember something one has not experienced, so we can only conclude that these things must be experiences we had while in other bodies during other lifetimes. We can only conclude, it's Shraddha, you can trust, he says. You have to trust that there's no other way that this information could have gotten into your mind. Have you had that experience? Before, have you had a dream like this? I had 2 or 3, and I can only really remember one. I don't know why. Maybe because I always tell people about this one. I forgot the other ones. But yeah, you'll have experience, for example, like, you know that you're running, and it seems completely normal that you're running, but instead of the experience being pushing yourself forward, you're actually pulling the ground to you in order to run. And the more you pull the ground, the more you pull, the faster you go. If you had that dream before. So it would be like a completely different, vivid experience of running. Because when we run now, the whole experience is pushing forward. But if I had a dream where the force for running wasn't pushing forward, it was pulling towards me. And gradually, and it felt great. And it was so interesting, and it was so vivid. And also, the more that you put your fingers into the ground to pull it towards you, the faster you went. You dig your fingers in the ground and pull it. And then you go, and all of a sudden, I saw like cat paws. And I realized I was chasing something to eat it in a dream. So, it's in a dream, I had an experience, a literal experience of what it means to be a lion or a tiger or some type of a big cat. I think it was big. Could have been a little cat, but it felt like it was massively powerful. That was not something that I read about. I did not read about those details of what the earth felt like between the nails. I didn't see a movie once, a science fiction movie, about the feeling of pulling to move forward. These aren't things that I saw or heard anywhere in my lifetime. Yet in the dream, I experienced it as real as I can dream about my mom. Or I can dream about some idea that I just read in a book. It says when that happens, you can the only place that could have possibly come from is from another life. So this is the easiest way, the best way to know your previous lives. Since I want to cover a lot, I may just keep going straight. And maybe if you guys have tons of questions about this, then next week we could do questions about this. Mana eva manushyasa purva rupani sangshati bhavishyatascha bhadram te tataiva na bhavishyata. Thus, a person's own mind reveals their previous births and also points towards their future births or their liberation. Please understand this. So how does it point to your future birth? It's simple. This is one of the basic things that Krishna says right away in Bhagavad Gita. The condition of the mind determines the condition of the body, and therefore the condition of the mind in this life determines the body achieved in the next life. So if your mind is reflexively, instinctually, naturally, fully gravitating towards things, that's where you're going to be manifesting yourself next time. The way that you want yourself to, the way that you want your identity to be, will be what happens in the next time. So long as you don't perform activities which don't allow you to fulfill your desires. If you perform vikarma, then you're destined to have suffering or frustration. So you'll actually get into situations which frustrate you from achieving those desires. If you perform proper karmas, good deeds, then your mind's desires will put you into situations that allow you to experience those desires. So now the king has a question. Again, I think what I'll just do is you can think about this over the week, and next Thursday I'll do questions and answers about this. And this video gets saved on my channel, so you can rewatch it and etc. That might actually work out to be a better template overall to always do. But since this is such an interesting section. Now he says, Adrishtam. Now, the king has a question. The question is this. When I dream, sometimes I see things that are impossible. Like an ocean hovering above the mountain. Or there's other examples of things that are impossible that you can dream. Like you can dream that you can see the stars during the day. Does that mean that once upon a time you were on a planet where you could see the stars and the sun at the same time? Does it, if you dream that there's an ocean that floats in the sky, does that mean that there's an ocean that floats in the sky in one of your lifetime? That's his question now. I see things that are impossible. Well, you can dream that you see your own self, but you don't have a head. Well, how do you see yourself if you don't have a head? Because your eyes are in the head. So there's things that are like impossible, but you can dream it. So he's going to ask about that. So Narada says, Adrishtam ashrutam chatra kvachin manasi drishyate yata tatanu mantavyam deshakala kriyashrayam. He says, sometimes the mind can see and hear things that are impossible to have physically seen or heard, because the mind can combine impressions from many different places, times, and activities. This is what the mind does. The basic mechanic of a dream is that you experience something during the day and you want to think about it more at night. So while you're dreaming, you think about it more. That's the basic mechanic. That's like Venus and Sagittarius equals blah, blah, blah. But the actual way it works out is you got tons of those things. There's tons of things that you have experienced throughout millions and millions of days that you still want to think about more or experience again. And when you sleep, you combine all those things. And sometimes you might combine them in weird ways. And then he says this very interesting things. Sarve kramanu rodhena manasindriya gochara ayanti bahusho yanti sarve samannaso jana. With our minds, we have gone everywhere and experienced everything. That is huge. But just to finish the sentence, he says, but what goes into memory in order may come out of memory disordered. Stuff may go into memory. Stuff goes into memory in a certain sequential order that will make sense, but it doesn't come out. It doesn't have to come out of memory in the same order. So something that you experienced over here 10 minutes ago can come out after something that you experienced over there 10,000 years ago. Or they can come out at the same time even though they have nothing to do with each other. With our minds, and this other part this was really heavy and big and important is with our minds, we have gone everywhere and experienced everything. So, you're thinking like, what am I going to do new? You've existed for an infinite amount of time, so there's nothing new. There's only one thing that's new. Is that you have not experienced actual love for the actual most beloved thing. And that's why you keep looking all around. But as for all the different things you can look at and everything you can do except that, you've seen it all before and done it all before. And that's one of the other facilities of forgetfulness, is because if you didn't forget that, then you would become depressed. There's nothing else to do, and I'm still not happy. So that's why he's saying, this is explaining like, why did I dream about a ocean on top of, like, floating above a mountain? It's because once upon a time you saw a mountain with clouds on it that look like an ocean, and another time you saw an ocean, so you have the detail of what an ocean looks like, and you put it over there with the mind puts things together, and that doesn't have to follow the same order as the things as the way it got the information. And he's saying that's not what I'm talking about with this dream, but the vivid, exact dream of something that you've not experienced before. Actually, the other dream is stuff that you have experienced before, just in a weird combination. So he's saying don't get confused about that. Now he says the mind has experienced everything, and it could even experience the most amazing thing. Satvika nishte manasi Bhagavat parshava vartini tamas chandramasi vedam. Do you hear the word chandra? The moon. Tamas, do you know what tamas means? You think it means darkness, right? Tamas is a name for Rahu. Even Paladipika calls Rahu Tamas. Because Rahu is invisible, so he's called Tamas. Tamas chandrama si vedam. Chandramas i vedam. Chandramasi Eva Edam Uparajavabhashate. So he's saying your mind, you can experience anything and everything if it is fixed in sattvika nishta, in perfect clarity. Then it can even experience Bhagavan. It can even experience the all attractive. So it's no doubt that the mind has all kinds of amazing things stored in it. But the one thing that it hasn't gotten is to be situated in perfect clarity where it would experience the all attractive. But it could. And then he says, just like the moon can reveal the presence of invisible Rahu. Because you understand that the moon, the problem with Rahu is you can't see it. So how do you know where it is? This is a big problem for astronomers before they figured out how to do it. But this was a big thing that people worked on for centuries to try to figure out when is the next eclipse going to be. You can't see it. You can't track the eclipse coming. All of a sudden it just happens. When the moon is there, then you know that that's the point. That's Rahu. When the moon comes by Rahu, then you see Rahu, because Rahu goes in front of the moon. It's the shadow. It's the tamas. It's the darkness. So he's saying somehow, he's using this analogy that the mind can even reveal the personality of the Supreme. The mind can even experience the Supreme, the all-attractive. Just like the moon can reveal the presence of the unseen Rahu. So now that Narada brings that up, the king is going to have another curiosity. He's going to say, how does the mind... Now, about liberation, we're going to start to talk about liberation. So, if the mind can even experience Bhagavan, if it gets situated in perfect clarity, well, how does it get situated in perfect clarity? How does it get liberated from the confusion of its identity? So Narada's going to explain. Naham mameti bhavoyam purushe vyavadhiyate yavad bhuti manoksharta gunavyuho hyanadiman. He says living beings have a beginningless sense of I and mine. It's called anadi, something which doesn't have a beginning, but it's inherent to the way things are. That's called anadi. Adi means beginning, anadi means unbeginning. So beginningless. The sense of I and mine is not something that came into being at some time. The consciousness, which is the foundation of reality, is the I and mine. It's beginningless. It's inherent in what reality is. It's inherent in what consciousness is. If you have perception, then you must be a perceiver. If you're a perceiver, then you have an identity and you have a relationship to the thing you're perceiving. Your identity is called I, and your relationship to the thing you're perceiving is called mine. So this sense of identity and relationship is beginningless. But as long as it is vyavadhyate, as long as it is divorced or disconnected from Bhagavan, then it will utilize gunavyuho. It utilizes the qualities of nature to invest itself into an external body. So how do you get liberated from reincarnation? Well, what reincarnation is the I of mind trying to find a place to exist. The mind is trying to find a place to be real. And the resources of the world gives the mind a place to be real. Those resources are called the triguna of prakriti. So the mind utilizes the resources of the world to create a real version of itself, a tangible version of itself. This is a beginningless phenomenon. It's the nature of consciousness to have I and express the I, and to have mind and express the mind in this way. As long as the consciousness has no conception of Bhagavan, then it will continue to manifest its identity in this external, using these external elements. But if it has conception of Bhagavan, then it will manifest its identity using Bhagavan. Bhagavan will provide the identity. Not provide the identity so much, but provide the body, the instantification, the realization, the realness to the identity. So he said, living beings have a beginningless sense of I and mine. As long as this sense remains divorced from the all-attractive, it will utilize the qualities of nature to invest itself in external body. So the only way that you can get liberated from the reflexive tendency to manifest yourself as a tangible being in an external way is to not divorce yourself from the internal reality. That's the only way. To not have unawareness or non-awareness of Bhagavan is the only way to not manifest a extrinsic, or what would you call it, non-essential form, extrinsic form, in some other realm, in somebody else's qualities. We're using the physical nature to manifest ourselves. The physical nature isn't us, we're using it to manifest ourselves. That's why it's problematic and difficult. That will continue to happen always, unless you realize that there's another nature. There's no other way to do it, and now he's going to go and talk about that. Supti murcho papeshu pranaya vihagatata nehate ham iti jnanam mrityu prajvayo api. I might stop the Sanskrit now so we can get the rest of the info. There's no mechanical or artificial way to prevent this from happening. How do you get liberated from manifesting an external body? There's no mechanical way. You can't force it to happen. The mind will manifest its identity. If it doesn't know any other way to manifest its identity, it will manifest its identity in an external world. The only way to solve the problem is to give it, undivorce it from Bhagavan. Even if you lose your sense of body, being the anchor for your eye and mind, it'll come back, Narada says. So he gives examples. When you're in deep sleep and you're not even dreaming, you've lost the connection to your body. You lost the anchor to your body in deep sleep. You can't even be woken up. You have to come out of deep sleep before you can be woken up. So, even when you lose your sense of body being the anchor for your eye and mind, like when you're in deep sleep, or if you're anesthetized, or if you're in a coma or asphyxiated, if you asphyxiate, you lose oxygen, then your connection to the nervous system breaks. So it's another kind of anesthetic. Or an extreme pain. But this can happen when you're like the breath freezes. If you're extreme pain, then you faint. So these are conditions where you actually lose the concept that the body is me. That happens every time you fall asleep. Anytime you go to the dentist, you lose the sense that this mouth belongs to you. It might as well be a rock. Your tooth. Anytime you faint, and if you go into a coma, etc. But that's not liberation. It doesn't come close to liberation. So just separating the mind from the body doesn't cause liberation. Because it will immediately return to the body as soon as the adverse conditions pass. Then he says, while the body is embryonic or in infancy, the sensory capacities are not well developed, and thus the mind cannot strongly anchor to it. But that's not liberation either. The connection to the physical body in these cases is like a new moon. Fully present but not fully visible. New moon, you can't see it. Is the moon not there? It's there. It's the same moon. Doesn't matter if the moon is a crescent, a half, or a full. It's the same size. It's just the amount of it that you can see. Makes a difference between a new moon, a half moon, and a full moon. So that's what Narada is using as his analogy. The connection between the mind and the body is always there, but sometimes it will be shadowed by some adverse condition. Like if it's embryonic, it hasn't even awoken yet. If it's infancy, it hasn't matured its senses yet. If it's in a coma, if it's fainted, if it's in deep sleep, then these conditions are like the moon being in front of the sun. New, you can't see it. Not in front of the sun, but conjoined the sun. It's not that it's not there. It's just that it didn't get a chance to manifest. So you can't force liberation by like trying to anesthetize your whole body. And then if I could anesthetize my whole body, then I would have to realize that I'm not this body. Yeah, you would temporarily realize that you're not this body. Just like when you go to the dentist, you realize the tooth is not you. But as soon as the anesthetic wears off, it's back to being you. Because it actually didn't go away, it just got overshadowed. Then he continues and he says, when you dream, you are not physically active, but still you pursue your sensuality. Similarly, when the mind does not fully connect to a body, it's not liberated, for it still harbors its divisive sense of I and mind. Thus, separation from the senses cannot cause liberation. This explains the statement that the king said before. He said, it seems like all these sages who were my teachers here don't really know what's going on. Narada says, yeah, it's not just like by separating yourself from sense activity that you actually get liberated. It's just like anesthetic. Suppression of activity. So separation from the senses cannot cause liberation. I'm not looking at the chat, I'm sorry, but I see somebody gave some donation. Thank you, Bash. And I'm saying again, I will take questions about this next week, next Thursday. So between this and next Thursday, you can rewatch the video or whatever, make notes of what questions you have. And you can ask them next week. Marie, thank you. So now he continues and he says, a living being, quote, living being. What's a living being? He says, a living being is known as a conscious entity exhibiting 16 sensorial capacities and 5 forces to circulate those capacities into the 3 aspects of the world. That's what a living being is. A living being is a conscious entity that interacts with the world. The way that the living entity interacts with the world is that it has 16 sensorial capacities, 5 incoming, 5 outgoing, and the 1 coordinator. 5 incoming, 5 outgoing, the 1 coordinator, and I have to look up the 16 then, because that only equals 11. But there's 16 sensorial capacities, and then there's 5 forces, those are the 5 pranas, to circulate those capacities into the world. This interaction between the sensorial capacities and the world causes the living being to attain or reject various physical forms that are capable of conferring sensations that produce pleasure or displeasure, happiness, fear, or unhappiness. That's what a living being is. It's a conscious thing that interacts with the world to try to accept the things that bring it happiness and reject the things that give it unhappiness. Try to avoid fear and displeasure and try to achieve happiness and pleasure. And so the living entity is using these sensorial capacities to try to juggle with the world to achieve situations. That's my dad. But I want to finish this. Sorry, Dad. All right, so we'll go on. Let me just see if I can send my dad a message. 1 second. Okay, so he says, we always do things with the intention to enjoy sensorial results. But as long as we do so without true awareness, these intentions will continually cause us to produce and be anchored into an extrinsic body. We always do things with the intention to enjoy sensorial results. That is not unnatural. It's the same thing. Somehow you guys don't. Because you're so predisposed to think that somebody is trying to chastise you for enjoying your life, that you think the Bhagavatam is saying the same thing. But he's saying we always do things with the intention to enjoy sensorial results. But as long as we do so without true awareness, then these intentions will continually cause us to produce and be anchored into extrinsic bodies. That's what he's talking about with the deer. And that's also what Pranjana showed. Liberation results when this lack of true awareness is eradicated. To do so, adore Hari with all of your being, understanding him to be the source, sustenance, and ultimate end of everything you can experience. Why would you adore Hari? Who the heck is Hari? Because Hari is the source of everything else that you ever wanted, the sustenance of everything that you wanted, and the ultimate end of everything you ever wanted. So just having that theoretical entity there, who's the source of all the stuff that you're using to manifest yourself, which is not you, comes from something else. Adore that person from whom it comes from, then you will eradicate your ignorance of that being. And then by eradicating your ignorance of that being, you'll develop I and mine in relation to that being. And then when you have I and mine in relation to that being, it won't manifest in the body, in the extrinsic world. It'll manifest in a body in relation with him. And that's liberation. Okay. I have a call to attend to from Papa. So I'm going to jump off again. Thanks a lot, Chamunda. So again, no idea what you guys said in the chat. But next week, we will do questions and answers on this topic. Thank you very much.